Well, I guess we can get the party started. Liz, would you do the honors?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm Liz Varmecki with South Suburbs for Green Space Over Concrete. As most of you know, we started in January after the board announced that they were going to turn Calumet Country Club into a trucking hub. And they were going to create a $60 million TIF to do that. So this kind of is our about, we're a multiracial group of concerned residents from the surrounding area. So we formed in opposition to this, but we, are kind of working as a campaign of Illinois Safe, which is Southland Against Fossil Fuel Energy, which successfully defeated the Glenwood power plant. So we're following up on that success, and we're going to take down Diversified and keep them from taking our money and stealing our green space. Now, are we going to show the video now, Tom?
Yes, why not?
Okay, and we had a protest or a little rally the other night outside of the Board of Trustees meeting, and it went really well. We thought we had a really great attendance, and we made the meeting extremely loud, and they were able to hear us, and they went into an executive closed door session after that. So that was pretty fun.
All right, here we go.
And yeah, there we go.
Walk brown, down and walk brown, down and walk brown, down and walk brown, down and walk brown.
Would you like to sign or? You're fine. You got some money?
Walk brown!
Get out of town!
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 Walk brown!
And they were shouting what exactly?
They were shouting, "Walt Brown, get out of our town."
Yeah.
Walt Brown is a millionaire from Arizona who thinks that he needs to take our public money for his profits.
Got it. Well, we're going to learn a little bit about him in a few minutes. So you got sort of a sneak preview.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of introduce Tom to the group. Tom Tresser is an educator, organizer, and creative champion, a public defender, and fighter of privatization. So he's been working in civic engagement and grassroots democracy for over 40 years. And in 2008, he was a co-founder of Protect Our Parks, which is a neighborhood effort to stop the privatization of public space in Chicago. In 2013, Tom co-founded Civic Lab. I think I got that year right.
Yes.
Which is a co-working space where activists, educators, coders, and designers came to work, teach, and build tools for civic engagement. He's the lead organizer of the TIF Illumination Project that investigates and explains the impacts of tax increment financing districts on a ward-by-ward basis, and now on a suburb-by-suburb basis. And we just really thought that Tom had invaluable knowledge when it came to TIFs. They're complicated, and we are by no means experts, and we thought the community would really benefit from his expertise. So with that, I'm going to let Tom take it away.
Thank you so much, Liz, and all the good people of Homewood who are organizing. Before I start my presentation, I want to introduce my colleague, the president and CEO of the Civic Lab, Jonathan Peck. Jonathan, could you introduce yourself, please, sir?
Hi, everybody. Good evening to everybody. I do hope that you are all well and safe in your refuge. It's great to see you all here tonight. What an amazing group. Thank you for sharing that video of your direct action and the work there. Tom is a mentor of mine. I've known Tom for a long time, back in my youth organizing days. And so he's not only working with him, but he's been a mentor of mine, and I'm so pleased to be working with him. At the Civic Lab, we're excited to be here and to support your efforts. We are not only just focused in Chicago, but we are nationwide now. So we are working with folks from across the country, from coast to coast. And so we are so excited to be able to support your local efforts fighting for your economic justice, for what you believe you need in your communities. So everything you said, Liz, is correct. We're here to support, we're here to train, we're here to coach up, we're here to provide technical assistance, to help you find the answers, to research, whatever you need. You can look at us as utility players. Between myself, Tom, and our training cohort across the city, we've got years and decades of direct action experience, participatory action research experience. And our overall goal is to help you all fight the good fight and win the good victories. And so we're just here to support you all. I'm glad that you all got into the fight. We believe that TIFs are inherently bad for Chicagoans and for all of you down there in the suburbs. And there's been a history of corruption and abuse. And Tom's gonna take you through all that good stuff. So we're just glad that you joined the fight, and know that you've got a strong partner in Chicago. And we're excited to be with you in the long haul. It's gonna be a fight, make no mistake. Power concedes nothing without demand, right? And so we know that it's gonna take a lot. And so we're here to support you through that protracted struggle. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you all.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we have been in the field for 7 years on TIFs. We've got a book out that is called Chicago is Not Broke, Funding the City We Deserve, which while focuses on the revenue solutions for the city of Chicago, really can be applied to just about any location in America. And there's a wonderful quote from the late Karen Lewis, may she rest in power. The TIF Illumination Project has been running since 2013. We have a wonderful website that's full of tasty TIF information for you at tiffreports.com. And you can also get our 2019 report on all the TIFs of Chicago by going to the URL that will be put in the chat. And you'll be able to see information about Chicago's TIFs that nobody has, but yet everyone should know. And so that website is also full of training videos and all kinds of information that you can spend some time with if you want to go deeper into the subject. This whole thing got started at a community meeting in 2013 over at the Chopin Theater on Division Street. It was packed. There's like 250 people jammed into this space to hear some academics and activists talk about TIFs. And it was like being at a hockey game. I mean, people were leaning into it and chanting. I mean, there was an energy in the air because Rahm Emanuel had just closed 50 public schools, and people all over the city were very present about what was going on with their property taxes, their public dollars. And so what happened that night is we introduced the work, and we said if anybody was interested in having us come to their communities to explain and illuminate, please let us know. The Civic Lab at that time, and this time really has no paid staff, and we don't even have an office, but we're still very powerful, and we have been able to respond to over 170 requests for meetings, which makes tonight number 171. And so when you ask us to come, we tried our best. And you can see here, good people all over the city want to know.
Can you project your slide?
I'm sorry?
Your slide.
Oh,
So
have I not been sharing? Oh, I beg your
No.
pardon. Oh, okay. My bad. Let's check this chat. Let's clear that up right now. Yes. Here I am talking away. All right. What I was saying was we had started at this public meeting back in 2013 at the Chopin Theater. And it was a wonderful experience. And it led to us having public meetings all over the city in just about every ward. And it's happened pretty much as it's happened tonight. Organizers got together, reached out, and we pulled together a public meeting. As I say, this is number 171. All right, let's start talking TIFs, shall we?
You're up as loud as it can go.
Please, everyone else, if you're on the call, mute yourself, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So what are TIFs, anyhow? They stand for tax increment financing. They're created by your municipality under state law, which goes back to 1977. They're designed to subsidize some business project in a blighted or underserved area. And this word blight causes a lot of tension and confusion and I would say upset. It's a loaded word in our opinion, and you have to ask who blighted who, especially in a city with a racist history like Chicago and many other urban areas. But nevertheless, the law says if you can prove your community or your part of your community is quote blighted, congratulations, you can get a TIF. But it also has to pass something called the but-for test, which means that but for the subsidy which the TIF will deliver, your proposed project could not happen, which usually means something like the market has fled, or the market deems this particular area is to be not worthy of investment. It would be too risky for a bank to loan money to a developer to put something in this area. And this is another very fuzzy proof, and we often find that it is not met. And I think you'll see what's going on with both of these criteria in our presentation for the TIF that's at hand for your community. What happens is when a TIF is created, it's noted how much property tax is being thrown off by the properties in the TIF. That is called the base. So hang on to that term, base. It's going to come up. It's very important. And what the TIF does is captures all the increment in property tax value from inside that TIF zone for 23 years, from all properties, residential, commercial, from new construction, or just simply existing properties are now worth more than they were before the TIF was created. The TIF can only be used for hard costs 99% of the time, which is another issue, a policy issue, because if you want, if you decide that what your community needs to make it great are, say, more teachers or more librarians or more coaches for your park district, sorry, a TIF cannot do that for you. And also the TIF is supposed to spend money only where the money was collected. That is what it's supposed to be. And the number one thing to remember is we're talking about your property taxes. Now, to illustrate, this is a TIF in the city of Chicago. The Midwest TIF was created in 2000. It's in the West Lawndale area, which is an African-American community of a modest means, middle class. And for the sake of our discussion, let us say that there are 1,000 properties inside the boundaries of this TIF. So let's say that we count up all the properties and we know there are 1,000. And let's say those properties are generating $1,000 in property taxes just as the TIF is beginning. So 1,000 properties generating $1,000 in property taxes. That's what we meant by the base. Okay, now this is the famous illustration that you'll often see in discussions of TIFs. And now let's break it down. So you see in blue is the base taxes that are being collected. And as I say in this example, it's $1,000. So what do we notice right away? We see that if it's $1,000 here, it's $1,000 here. It's flat. So that means that there's no cost of living for your units of government over 23 years. And every year, the properties are assessed and a value is assigned for them. And hopefully the value goes up. So here we are in year 5 on this little chart. And let's say at this point on our delta, let us say that now the TIFs is generating $2,000 in property taxes. So there was 1,000 at the start, but now it's 5 years later, and say there's some new construction, say values have increased, it's collecting 2,000. So that is the increment from year 1 here to year 5. And the increment is $1,000. So that is being collected by the TIF. Now say here's year 15, and let's say it's now $10,000 is being collected by all the property taxes from this TIF. It's the same idea. The delta, or the difference from where we were at the start, is now $9,000. So this operation continues every year for 23 years. And the money that's being collected by the TIF, this new money, is staying with the TIF piggy bank and is not going to the units of local government. What we like to say at the Civic Lab is that that money in the base is on the books, and it is part of the budgeting process that your unit of government is used to going through. In Chicago, it's pretty pathetic. We don't have a lot of chance to intercept the budget or to speak about it, but maybe in Homewood, it's a little better for you, and you might be able to see the budget as it's being proposed and have a chance to input, make suggestions, etc. The money being collected from the base is in that process. The money that's being accumulated by the TIF is not in that process. It's what we call off the books. So I'm going to ask a question now, and for this you can unmute yourself and just shout out, what are some of the things that property taxes pay for? And you can also put it into chat too. What do property taxes pay for in the good city of Homewood?
The high school.
Schools, yes, put it in chat. Anything else? What else? Libraries, right, I see, fire department, the park district, got it, yeah. Fire people, yes. School programs, exactly. Someone put in running the village, exactly. So, is it the case that, say, you don't have any children in school, you cannot pay your property taxes that go to the schools? Is that possible? Rachel said her shaking her head. No. Say you're allergic to grass. Can you skip the money that you pay to the park district? No, that would be stupid.
No.
And that's part of the deal, isn't it? Homewood is a nice place to live. So it has many things in it. And these are part of what it costs to run your village. So you want to add a new park, or say an annex to the library, or whatever the case may be. This is how we pay for things in America. So if you find that your property taxes are too high and you think you're not getting a good deal, well, then you're free to move from this place to another. So property taxes are very important for the running of our local governments. And we want to be mindful of any time $1 of property taxes goes missing, okay? When $1 of property taxes goes missing, these are the units of government that are affected. Now, of all the units of government that you mentioned, which is the one that uses the most of your property tax dollar?
Schools.
Yes, that's right. You didn't even have to, that wasn't even a pause on that. You got that right. We're talking to people who understand how government works here. So in the city of Chicago, this is how it breaks out for the use of that dollar. And as you see, 56 cents of the property tax dollar is collected and used for our public schools. And then following the city of Chicago for all the various operations, you know, the police, the fire, the streets and sand, et cetera. But then there are other users too, Cook County, the parks, the colleges, and the libraries. So we would put it to you that these are the victims when $1 of property tax is stolen or absconded with. Now, how do TIFs work? We mentioned that you have to be proved to be blighted. These are some of the most common blighting factors that we find in the statute, such as age, obsolescence, code violations, excessive vacancies, or overcrowding. But we're going to find that those terms are so elastic as to be virtually unusable or universal. Or in other words, anything or place in the state of Illinois can be TIFed. Now in Chicago, the process to create a TIFs are like this. It's a little complicated flow chart, but it's pretty similar in your community. And what we try to show here is where the mayor or your chief executive comes in and where the city council comes in and where the public comes in. And you see that the public comes in rather late in the game. And what you find, and I think what we found to be true in your situation, is that by the time the public fully understands what is happening, it's almost too late. Now, whether it's going to be too late for the TIF we're talking about tonight is up to you. And in the case of Chicago, this is the person who decides how TIFs run. That is the mayor, and this is our current mayor, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was elected in 2019. Now in Chicago, we have a famous saying that our city hall is sort of a rubber stamp. And right now, the city council votes with the mayor on the average of 87% of the time in any kind of contested vote of significance. But this has been true of our city council since dirt. And there has been no case in recorded history of our city council gainsaying the mayor. And we put this here because your situation may be a little different. You have a smaller city council, obviously, village council, and your opportunity to influence this TIF process may be much better than ours here in the city of Chicago. As for our budgeting process, things kind of fly through, in the city. Back in 2016, there was a modest pushback on Mayor Emanuel. That pushback vanished in 2017 as the mayor heaped more property taxes on us. Then it went into 2018. There was virtually no pushback. You see, he's pretty pleased with himself. And then his last budget, again, one no-sayer. And in all that time, Mayor Emanuel had no budget hearings, zero. So what you're doing tonight by helping you, educate yourselves on your civic finances is a good deed. It's a wonderful thing that your organizers have arranged for you on this call. And then as Mayor Lightfoot took over, she got a little pushback on her budget, but still overwhelmingly approved. So that's kind of how things roll in the cities around here. So let us talk specifically about TIFs. How big a deal are they? Well, you can see in the city of Chicago, they are everywhere. 30% of the city of Chicago is in a TIF district. And we have 140 active TIFs in 2019. In the suburbs, we had 304, giving Cook County a total of 444 TIFs. Now you can see the map of Cook County on the right. It looks like TIFs are kind of everywhere, like chicken pox or something. 94 cities, including yours, have these bad boys all over the city. And I don't know if anybody is a fan of the Frankenstein movies, but you may recall that the monster was created by the scientist supposedly to serve humanity. And he says, I know it looks ugly, but don't worry, I got it under control. But then the next thing you know, the monster bursts his chains, tromps the scientist to death, sets the village on fire. Oh, well. As I said, 140 active TIFs in the city of Chicago in 2019. They stole $684 million. That's a huge amount of money to go missing or into the TIF piggy banks. And since TIFs came to Chicago, they've taken over $9 billion. $9 billion. This chart is from the Cook County Clerk, and it shows for the TIFs rising in Cook County, which are the red line, it shows the rise, And the orange line shows the rise of TIFs in the city of Chicago. Now, there's a political analysis that we do that we're not going to go into here, but just for you political junkies, Mayor Daley, Richard M., joined us, came to Chicago to be the mayor in 1989. So you see that's where the black arrow is. And that's really the start of the growth of TIFs in the city of Chicago. This is a political beast. It gives the mayor a lot of power, and they're very addictive. And we're going to see how that is so as we move through this presentation. But you see how TIFs are quite a big deal in Cook County. So you guys are part of a larger narrative. Now, the biggest single thing the TIF Illumination Project does every year is total up the number of TIFs and tells people in the city of Chicago how much money is left over in the TIF accounts at the end of the year. This number has never been published before our work, but now it's common knowledge. And so here we have the number for 2019. So the city of Chicago had $1.8 billion in unspent TIF funds sitting in the TIF piggy banks as we came into 2020. You may want to know what the similar number is for Homewood. Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. For the state of Illinois, it's a monstrous big deal. There are TIFs across 559 municipalities. So as I said, you are part of a much bigger project, a much bigger fight. And since TIFs came to Illinois, they've taken $22 billion. That is an awful lot of money, even for a wealthy and big state like Illinois. And it's a fair question to ask, what happened to all that money? Who got it? Now, across America, sad to say, there is no national accounting, but our best guesstimate is that there are 20,000 TIFs across 49 states that extract $40 billion each and every year. That is to say, that $40 billion does not go to the units of government that we have just mentioned and that need this money so desperately. So you think we've got a big problem on our hands in America? I think we do. All right, to sum up, and then we'll take a pause for questions. TIFs are property taxes. The increment is collected by the TIF and is held by the TIF, which is operated by your city, run by the mayor. It lasts for 23 years. They're supposed to satisfy the blight and but-for conditions. They're only to be used for hard costs, and they're supposed to be used where collected. Okay, before we move into the specifics of the TIFs of Homewood, I think this might be a good time to pause for questions. So go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question. That's fine, and we'll see if we can handle them. Just unmute and ask away.
Hey, Tom. How many TIFs are in unincorporated Cook County? I
couldn't tell you that. I know how many TIFs there are in Cook County, but not unincorporated.
But generally speaking, are TIFs attached to municipalities? Like if, say, this country club property was like disconnected from Homewood and just sort of separated from a municipality, could it still have a TIF on it, like say through the Cook County Commission?
No, they're almost 100% created by a municipality for that city or town. I am not aware of the County of Cook creating a TIF. I don't think they have the appetite for it. I don't even know if they've passed the legislation that would allow them to do it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
I'm putting my contact information in the chat, by the way, in case anyone wants to contact us later.
I have a question, Tom.
Go ahead.
Do TIFs generally benefit a particular type of industry or company? Or, you know, is it usually large businesses or small businesses, or do you track that?
TIFs are created usually for specific projects. So sometimes an area is slated for development and they'll say, we don't have a specific idea for this part of the city, so we're going to create a development area, and then we'll entertain projects to be looked at. But a lot of times there's a specific thing that triggers the TIF. So in your case, it's the country club thing that is going vacant, it's sitting there, and someone wants to do something there. It's not like an abstract, you know, a hypothetical. It's a specific place and a specific project that has triggered this process. That is usually the case. Somebody asked in chat, what happens when a TIF does not perform as expected? Aha. Yes, we're going to talk about that a little later, but the answer is if the numbers were off and you were a little optimistic about your projections and you took out a loan to get the TIF going and the thing goes busts, you're still on the hook for the loan. You, the people of the TIF area. So we've seen that happen, by the way. Somebody put in, Lassens received TIF dollars and developed their outside area, so I thought. I'm not familiar with that. Someone put, Homewood is in competition with other municipalities to attract business investment. This development aside, if Homewood doesn't offer TIFs for desirable businesses, aren't they a disadvantage to other municipalities? That is such an awesome question. Who answered that? Who asked that question? Patrick, you know what? We're going to get to that in the policy considerations towards the end of this presentation. And if I haven't answered that question to your satisfaction, you can unmute and just jump in at that point. But that is often the rationale for TIFs. But you'll see that we have a robust response to that.
Also, somebody asked, what happens if the TIFs are unsuccessful or if they move away, if they sell the property? What happens to the TIF then? Like
well, the TIF was created, the project was created. We're still on the hook to pay that debt off. The owner, if he sells the property, he walks away with the profits, and good for him or her.
Companies may move or go bankrupt. The money disappears. You don't get it back.
Yeah. So that's the other side of the coin. If it was a total bust and you know, it just was, the project had no merit, and the owner goes bankrupt. Like for example, in Chicago, there were 2 TIFs created to give money to this bookstore. I forget, went out of business. Borders.
Borders, yeah.
2 million and then 4 million, and then of course Borders went out of business, and it's just an empty building. We didn't get our money back. So Christy asked, so what you're saying is that it can only be used for building costs. That's correct. Now, it can be used for public buildings. So we have seen TIF money being used for parks and schools and firehouses, but that goes contrary to the original intent of the TIF statute because it was supposed to create new property taxes. So if you use a TIF to create a school building, it doesn't throw off property taxes. The counter argument is it still makes the community better, and you might get higher taxes. You know, if you have new libraries and new schools, people will move maybe and be attracted, and that might be a reason for giving public TIF money to a school or library, but it is really not what TIFs were created for. A question comes from our Facebook page. Why does it last 23 years? That's a great question. I wish I knew. It's like a biblical generation. Maybe it's because TIFs were attached to debt, you know, and maybe they thought that was a reasonable period to pay back some of these bonds and notes. And also in Illinois, they can be extended another 12 years. So a TIF can go out of, can be scheduled to be sunsetted, but then the local body can say, hey, you know what? Let's keep this bad boy going. On the other hand, they can also be sunsetted prematurely at the mayor's request. So the mayor can come to the city council and go, you know what? This thing isn't working. I request that we sunset a TIF. And about 40 TIFs in the city of Chicago have sort of been killed prematurely. All right, let us move on because we still have a lot to cover, and there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end of our talk. So we will save all these questions in chat. So continue to please post your questions, and the promise will be we will answer all those questions and put them in an email. So if you want to get the follow-up, put your name and email in the chat. Otherwise, we actually don't really know who's on the call. We just see names, and sometimes we just see first names and stuff. So we really have no way of getting back to everybody. We'll have a chance to interact also at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's get back to the flow, the TIF flow here. All right. So, as I say, the TIFs are property taxes that are supposed to be used where collected. So let's talk about the TIFs of Homewood. I expect that's really why most of you are on the call in the first place. We want to get very specific, and this is how we roll in all our presentations. We start sort of globally, and we end up in the specific place we are. So the TIFs of Homewood. You have 5. They are the Northeast TIF, the East CBD TIF, the Downtown Transit-Oriented Development TIF, the Southwest TIF, and the 187th and Dixie Highway TIF. You had another one that lasted from 1978 to 2014, which was your downtown TIF. And that is, if you see the red arrow pointing to the spot where it used to be, it kind of takes up the footprint, not 100%, of where the downtown TIF is today. So you can see in the inset map, you can see the green, a light green, the lime, that's the old TIF that has expired. And then you can sort of map it against the shape of the downtown TIF, which is in the dark green. And so there's a kind of an overlap there. Okay, so those are your TIFs that are operating and that have operated. So what have they done? Now, what I'm going to show you now is news. What we are now going to reveal, as far as I know, has never been shared before. So we're going to make some news. These are the TIFs that have been present for you. They have extracted a total of $30.7 million since they were created. And at the end of 2019, there was $1 million in property taxes sitting in your TIF accounts. So that is new information that we think is important for you to know. And what this chart shows you is that the years that the TIF was created, the year that they're going to terminate, how much money they spent in 2019. And you can see the downtown TIF had the most robust expenditure of about $688,000. And it also tells you how much TIF money was extracted. Now you'll notice 2 of the TIFs, well, one is expired, but the other one, the East CBD, has got no extraction. And so even though that has another 20 some odd years to go, whatever, what's going on there? Presumably, property values are flat or below ground. So just because there's a TIF doesn't mean necessarily it fills up with TIF cash. In the case of that particular TIF, there's nothing in the piggy bank. This information, by the way, will be on your handout, which will be put into the chat if we can attach a file. If not, we will email it to you, certainly no later than tomorrow, but only if you put your email into the chat. But one of our facilitators will attempt to attach the PDF into the chat right now, and you can grab it if that function is working. We were having a little trouble with it earlier. All right, so that's the past and the present. As I said, nobody's ever given this complete a picture of the TIFs of Homewood before, but now you have it. So the question is, what's on the table? What are we talking about? What is this fight about? Well, the proposed TIF that's on the table is to turn what used to be the Calumet Country Club into a TIF district in order to do something. So this means that according to the statute, that property is blighted. That is to say, nobody wants to do anything with it. The market has fled, and conventional financing is impossible. That is what is being represented here. And they're also saying, but for the infusion of cash that this TIF will give the project, nothing can be developed there. That is what is being asserted. Now, I have never personally been to the Calumet Country Club, but it seems to me a bit of a stretch to declare that blighted, and that nobody can do anything on that site without a public subsidy. This is what the site looks like in terms of its siting, the zoning. It sort of sits at the top of your community. It's sort of like a notch, as it were, like a tooth, and it's surrounded by the villages of Hazel Crest and East Hazel Crest. So this shows you a little bit of the sort of the context. It's about 116 acres. Now, there was a controversy in your town about this piece of property, and that it seems like if there was no appetite for you guys to gin up a TIF, then maybe Hazel Crest would annex this little notch and do it on their own, and you guys wouldn't have a chance to participate. So there was a lawsuit, and this is what your village has agreed to with the developer, which is called Diversified Partners. The village has agreed to reimburse the developer upfront for $1 million in TIF eligible funds that will be paid to the village from the increased property taxes. They'll reimburse the developer for up to $100,000 in legal costs if the developer is forced to take Hazel Crest to court to compel Hazel Crest to issue a building permit. However, I thought there was a very interesting clause in this settlement that said, if the village does not create this TIF and approve the development on the table by May 12th of 2021, which is about 2 months away, the developer will be allowed to disconnect, and the village of Homewood will pay $250,000 for his troubles. Okay, that's a little bit of the legal history, but what exactly are we talking about? What is this thing that they want to turn your golf club, your green space into? Well, it's going to look something like this. A major industrial distribution center with potentially 4 buildings, or a 5th one if you include the repair shop, with lots of parking, surface parking. So what is green space now would become asphalt. And there's a berm, I think they've talking about it along the southern border along 175th Street. It's up to 800,000 square feet of industrial space with buildings up to 80 feet tall, projected 350 inbound and outbound truck trips operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But in discussion with the organizers of this event, they told me that is way conservative, and they think it's more like 500 to 700 and more inbound trucks daily spewing diesel and operating in your community. And 40 acres of the property would not be developed, which is along the Cherry Creek, which they really can't. However, never say never in the world of TIFs. So that is essentially what is being proposed by these guys, Diversified Partners, based in Arizona. They have 33 employees, and they generated about $5 million in sales. But they control a portfolio of many, many projects worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So I would say they're not a giant, but they're not a mom and pop store either. They're very successful and good at what they do. The total cost of the project on the table is $90 million. And the guy that seems to be running the show is the guy there seated, Mr. Walt Brown Jr. And that's who y'all were chanting about last night. Apparently Walt Brown has got you guys angry. Well, with good reason. He's got 5 properties that we know of in Aspen. And this is one of them that he's put out on Airbnb. So that's what we know a little bit about this guy, and he's very, very wealthy. So how much money are we talking about in TIF subsidy for this particular project on the table? Well, by looking at the city's website, which I did a few weeks ago, there was a lengthy description of the project. And at the very end of it, I mean, you had to scroll like 5 or 6 pages down. Almost the very last sentence was the number we were looking for, $39 million. So for the last few weeks while we were gathering our facts and planning tonight's meeting, that seemed to be the answer to the question that you guys are contemplating giving this project $39 million of your property taxes. However, there was a meeting last Tuesday of the Joint Review Board, and lo and behold, 39 million has now become 60 million. We don't know how that happened, but there it is. This is a screenshot from that meeting. And just by way of a scale, your total village budget for 2020 is 22 million. Let me repeat that. The total amount of money it takes to operate your village in 1 year is $22 million, but you're contemplating giving Mr. Brown or subsidizing his project to the tune of $60 million. Exactly how do they plan on distributing the 60 million? Well, that was another screenshot. 10.5 million for land acquisition, 31 million for site improvement. This is the laying of sewers and other services. 750,000 for rehabilitation of structures, 37 million for professional service costs. That's a lot of cost. But my favorite is interest. $5.3 million of your property tax money would not be going to schools, libraries, and all the places that you listed, but that's going to be shipped to Wall Street for handling the paper on this project if it goes through. So how do you feel about sending $5 million of your dollars to Wall Street in these times? I don't know. If it was me, I'd be steamed at this point. What did your village leader say about this thing based on some of the FOIAs that you guys have done so adroitly? Well, this guy, Jim Marino, who's your village manager, didn't think much of the project. This is from an email from June 12th, 2019. He said, "There's simply no circumstance that would make us comfortable with an industrial development of the type you are proposing." Huh? What happened? Well, as I said, there was a meeting last Tuesday on the 15th, which is the first stop in the TIF circus. They have to do this meeting, and these are the representatives of the TIF of the taxing bodies that are affected by the TIF. They must meet first to approve the TIF, and nothing can happen without these guys meeting first. And it was pretty amazing. Liz, would you care to take the microphone and tell the people what happened at this particular meeting?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend in person due to the time, so I Zoomed in, and we were under the impression that there was the possibility of having a public member appointed to the Joint Review Board. So 2 of our members went up there with the intention of trying to nominate a public member and to get their voices heard, but that was not what happened. The Joint Review Board already had a member in mind. They appointed them. It was somebody that's already worked on previous TIFs, and they took no comments from Zoom. We were raising our hands, putting them down. They turned off the comment section, and then they only took brief comments from the 2 activists who were there. And one of them, I think he's available now. Dave, are you here? He's at work, so he's trying to listen in. I'm sorry. If not, Keaton, can you kind of describe what it was like being in the room? Because I know it must have been even more frustrating than it was for all of us watching on Zoom.
Yeah, I could speak to it a little bit. it was kind of just like a deer in headlight kind of moment. Dave, who lives on 175th Street, has a really big connection to this. And so he was feeling super emotional. And we both tried to chime in when they had when they were trying to choose the public person to represent us. They silenced us and told us it wasn't our turn to speak, and that we were only going to be allowed to speak at the public comment section. And then we go fast forward through the rest of the meeting towards when we do get to speak. And they say we have 2 minutes to say our piece, and we said as much as we could and just felt rushed and not like we were actually going to be heard or anything like that. But then we were just also trying to like understand what was going on, like the fact that it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and no one has really tried to communicate this with us. And we were both like looking at all the comments going up on the screen. We even got like Marino to respond to us saying like, look, there's comments. And then the lawyer, Chris Cummings, stopped him from accepting the comments from the Zoom. So it was just a really intense experience. And I just tried to say whatever I could on the spot to just be like, are you guys really going to continue to do this? Like, this is not something that our community needs. And it's really incredible that they have such a lack of imagination for 130 acres of green space. So, I mean, you know, we can go into a lot more on that, but basically it was extremely frustrating situation to be in and just feel so small compared to the powers that be.
Well, thank you so much for going and representing. I'm sorry, Tom, but yeah, it was very frustrating. We did get 2 members though to vote against. And so I think that a lot of the people on the board didn't like the way it sounded, didn't think it made sense. So hopefully going forward, there can be some more no votes.
Is there anybody on this call tonight who tried to access that meeting, was on the Zoom and didn't get a chance to speak? If so, unmute yourself, put it in chat. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I was trying to speak that night.
Say your name, please.
Or that day. Casey Kelso.
Thank you.
I mean, it was very demoralizing hearing like Chris Cummings say that they didn't need to take public comments over Zoom. And in fact, after that meeting, I was able to find the Illinois Attorney General's guidance on the Open Meetings Act changes from last year due to COVID, and it recommends that they should be taking public comment over Zoom. I put the quote from it in the Zoom chat if you're curious.
Good job, sir. Anyone else want to testify at this point about if you were trying to get through to that joint review board meeting?
Hi, yeah. My name's Rachel Smith. I was on Zoom trying to, figure out exactly what they were talking about, because a lot of it went over our head and we were very frustrated because we were trying to ask questions just about what they were discussing and nobody's responding to our written statements. They weren't talking to the people that were in the room or anything. Like, information was just so locked up and they weren't willing to share at all. Like, it was probably one of the most interesting experiences in my life, watching a bunch of people discuss public funds and what to do with public decisions and shut out the public completely.
Shut out the public completely. If I had to make a sampler and put it above the fireplace to describe TIFs, that would be it. They really don't want you to put your 2 cents in, though they want your 2 cents. I guess I would be the way to take it. They want your money. They just don't want you to have anything to say about it. We could probably spend for the rest of the evening breaking down that event. To me, it's symbolic of this corrupt situation where people kind of lose their minds and disregard the overwhelming sentiment of the public who actually elects these people to office and pays their salary. And I can only, as I was watching that meeting, I was getting angry for you and with you. I've seen this happen in meetings all over the country. When TIFs come to town, people lose their minds. The elected officials forget who they serve and they become, servants of the developer. And I think that's what we saw that night. I share your frustration. So that's a good setup for moving into the to the next little piece here. Your neighbor, the village of East Hazelcrest, the mayor there, Thomas Brown, wrote a letter on February 17th in which he says, "We are of the opinion that the area does not meet the criteria for a TIF. It certainly is not blighted. And in fact, the proposed settlement will be a blight to our residents directly across the street." So that's a good segue into the discussion about the public policy insults that TIFs represent. Not just to you, but into communities all over America. And as like we say at the Civic Lab, a policy problem is an organizing opportunity. And your group has already done so much excellent work, including the creation of a website, a Facebook group page, and organizing this meeting tonight. And so when local government is unresponsive, it is up to you, the people, to remedy. So here are the opportunities as we see them at the Civic Lab. One, TIFs starve local government. And if you care about your property tax dollars, you want to know how they're being used. It doesn't get more basic than that. And didn't we fight a revolution back in the day when the mother country messed with our taxes? Okay, so yeah, get angry because it doesn't get any more fundamental in terms of the DNA of local government. And in Cook County, schools are supposed to collect 59 cents of the dollar. But what's happening is the TIFs are jumping in before they should get their full share. They should be collecting more. So TIFs are backstopping 5 cents of every property tax dollar collected in Cook County. So if you took that TIF slice out, then all the other pie slices fatten up, including, of course, your public schools. We say that the definition of blight is meaningless. I think I've tipped my hand there earlier in the presentation. In Chicago, we find TIFs all over the place. On LaSalle Street, which is our Wall Street, $842 million in public money has been showered on high rises all throughout the loop. In Greektown, the Marianos on Halsted there got $7 million in a thriving community that is by no means blighted. And where I live, in Lincoln Park, the Grossinger Superstore, which is, you can see where the blue arrow is, received almost $9 million for renovations. And this is where the Apple Store is, Steppenwolf Theater, Charles Schwab Investment Company is across the street. This is one of the hottest retail, even during COVID, it's still a very prosperous part of town. And yet, a few years ago, Mr. Grossinger got $9 million of my money, of our money. We say TIFs cause economic inequity and bolster segregation. They hoard taxes in prosperous communities and starve poor communities. That's why we have the handcuffs there. When TIFs collect money, it's only supposed to be spent where the TIF is collected. So this heat map, which is about 10 years old over there on the city of Chicago, shows that the central loop area, which obviously is very prosperous, has the most TIFs, and those are the fattest bank accounts. Whereas communities of color in the surrounding areas that have TIFs are starved. And so the money that's collected and hoarded by the TIFs in the prosperous community cannot find their way to that poor Black or brown community 5, 6, 7 miles away. That is anti-distributional and not progressive. So if you're someone who believes in progressive economics and that the rich should pay their fair share and that there should be some distribution of assets across the body politic, TIFs do not do that. It's the opposite. And here are a few projects funded by TIFs in the loop. The biggest one is the conversion of an insurance building into the Randolph Street Tower Apartments for $54 million. But PepsiCo, that company that's so poor and bereft, got $11 million for the creation of their headquarters in the West Loop. The Carbide building was converted into the Hard Rock Hotel. It took $5 million. They sold, and now it's called the St. James. These are just a few. The TIF Illumination Project has a whole portfolio of egregious examples. Also, we want to point out that TIFs corrupt your political process. And in the city of Chicago, we have a long rogues gallery of aldermen who have been sent to prison for corruption. Now, right now, Alderman Carrie Austin is under investigation for some fraud. She received about $15,000 in campaign contributions from the developers of 2 TIF projects who received about $23 million. Walter Barnett, the alderman whose ward includes that Mariano's, received just $3,000 from the developers of the Mariano's project. I'd say that's a pretty good investment or a good return. Danny Solis, who was the head of our zoning committee for many, many years, received $64,000 in contributions from one project that received $9 million in TIF funds. Danny Solis wore a wire for the FBI for 2 years, and it remains to be seen if he's going to go to prison. Brian Hopkins, the alderman of the 2nd Ward, received $6,000 in campaign contributions from the zoning lawyer of the Lincoln Yards project. My favorite example is this guy, Ed Burke, one of the most powerful politicians in Illinois, city council member for over 50 years, indicted by the FBI at the end of 2019. On the wire that was released, the transcripts were released, we hear the guy that he was shaking down, the businessman, say, "I need his favor for my TIF money." That's about as venal and crass as it can get. And Alderman Burke was heard on the wire saying, "Did we land the tuna?" You know, in other words, did we get the contract for my law firm? And then if the answer was, yeah, the tuna was landed, then Ed would get the TIF approval for this person. So Ed Burke is going to go to prison, and he will join a long line of aldermen who've been sent to the pokey. 32, actually, 32 aldermen from Chicago have been sent to prison since 1973. All right, continuing on with our discussion of policy. Surprise, surprise, TIFs have nothing to do with economic development. But wait, Tom, you may say, isn't that how they've been sold to us? Well, the Lincoln Land Institute has been looking at land use policy for over 40 years, and this document here, called Rethinking Property Tax Incentives for Business, looks at the entire array of incentives that have been given to business across the country, of which TIFs are one. They say, please, please, if you're going to offer incentives, don't give them to every firm that asks. Don't. 90% of the time they don't work, and handing them out after a company is already located in an area without them makes no sense at all. But ladies and gentlemen, that actually describes about 95% of all the TIFs that are ever gifted to businesses across America. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can Google the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and grab this document. It's free on their website, and you can look at it. It's really a good read. So it's not about economic development. All right, what else is on our checklist? School districts sue. So we see cases across America where a deal has been made by the local mayor or village official for a TIF, and the village official calls the president of the Board of Education or the SOUP and says, look, I'm planning a TIF in the downtown area for this project. Don't thwart me. I'm going to give you some money for the school district behind the scenes. And they enter into a memo of understanding, and that's what happened in Oak Park back in 2008 or so. But after a few years of this, Village District 200 saw that they were not actually getting what they were promised, and they sued their own mayor. The case dragged on for a year, and it cost the taxpayers over $600,000, meaning that the taxpayer was on both sides of the fight. They were prosecuting and defending. And that's like the cost of a fire truck, or, you know, a couple of teachers, or a library annex, or I mean, $600,000 is a lot of money to piss away on lawyers. I talked to Sharon Peck Lehman, who is a member of the D200 school board, and this is what she told me. Economic development is not the business of school districts. Education is. TIFs take dollars from schools. The best economic development localities can do is provide great education. When dollars from education go into these deals, the game never comes out favorably for students. And so I invite you to meditate on that quote for your school districts. And we want to know, why aren't your school board members up in arms? Are there, and I hope there's some on this call tonight. If not, I invite you all to call your school board members and demand that they get into this fight, because their school district is being impacted and will be impacted negatively. All right, last thing we want to mention, as I said before, TIFs are off the books. And they're part of the reason why Chicago and other cities get into expensive debt. So in Chicago is very famous for getting into expensive debt, or as I say, going to the payday loan store. This one example here is enough to steam me up, but Mayor Emanuel took out $1 billion loan with $1 billion of interest. So I invite you all to come to the Tom Tresser credit card company, and I will loan anyone on this call tonight $100. If you pay me back in 2 weeks, $200. Just email me at tom@civiclab.us, and I will be happy to arrange that financing for you. $1 billion could have bought 5,200 single-family homes for 21,000 people. So instead, we're just going to give that $1 billion to Wall Street. And that's the point I made earlier when we pointed out that your deal has $5 million in debt. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my formal presentation. And I would like to turn the microphone back to our hosts, our organizers.
Yeah. I first of all want to just thank everybody for coming tonight. I think we do have some more questions that we've been trying to kind of answer as we go, but it is a really important note that, yeah, the Homewood school districts and Flossmoor school districts are not in this area. So we are stealing from one of the least funded school districts in the entire state. So we are doing better at the expense of our neighbors, if we even do better on the deal. So it's just a horrible deal. And I also want to, of course, invite everybody who's available to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. It's our time to still ask questions as a community and offer our comments. So there really is nothing more important that you could do tomorrow for your community than come at 1 p.m. So I do want to say that. And of course, I want to thank Tom for his time tonight and all the information he's given us and all the research that he's done. It's just really, it's very illuminating, Tom. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, we are well ahead of our schedule. So
can we back